All right, what's up, guys? Here I am back with another video. That's 2 in like 3 days, so doing pretty good. Keeping up with it. Should be short and sweet. Honestly, we're going to just cover the World Eater matchup. I think the format that I'm going to do with these going forward is I'm going to do like a matchup guide like this, where I sort of break down what we're looking for in the matchup, and then I'm going to do my best to get a battle report, trying to illustrate a lot of these things in like a live game. So it's going to probably be my idea for this format. I'd love to get through as many different matchups as I can. I'm going to stick with kind of the more technical ones. I think they are more coin flippy. I think it's not very fun, like talking about guard and knights. Those matchups are like kind of cursed. They're winnable, obviously, but they're not super fun and exciting to talk about. So we're probably going to go Emperor's Children after this, followed by Orcs. Those seem to be like pretty popular. And then after that, we'll just dig into kind of what's left in the format and go from there. So without further ado, here is the matchup guide for World Eaters. Okay, so no floating head today just because I have so much stuff on the screen, but here we go. So overall matchup for World Eaters, I think is 6 out of 10 difficulty. I think depending on your list and your opponent's list, this can kind of fluctuate up or down a little bit, but for the most part, I think this is a skill matchup for both sides of the table. And if you can break down the game the right way and kind of make your right plans and use the stuff that I'm going to mention in this video, I think this is a very winnable matchup for Grey Knights very consistently. And it's one of the most fun matchups that I have in the game on my current list. So as we're playing Grey Knights in this matchup, it is a shooting focused matchup for us. So I know that Grey Knights are very hybrid. They're very good in melee, etc., etc. However, if you find yourself charging the World Eater player more often than not, you are going to end up in really bad positions and you are likely going to be losing the game. So when I say shooting focused matchup, we're going to try and shoot all of our guns at max range while clearing off objectives and contesting them with as little as possible. Think like 5-man interceptors or transports. We really never want to have our Dread Knights or big Crow Brick on an objective, because if our opponent gets to connect with those too soon in the game and we lose those damage resources, we are going to lose. Which brings me right to the next point, is keep Crow safe. Now, if you're not playing the Crow Brick in your list, obviously you don't have to worry about it, but for 9 out of 10 of you, whatever, 90% of us that are playing the Crow Brick, we just cannot let this unit die for free, and it needs to activate 2, 3, 4 times in this match for it to be really favorable for us. What that means is we're shooting him at max 18-inch range with the Purifying Flames. We got him screened out with transports and Dread Knights so that he's not going to get charged. He is not supposed to be in melee in this matchup until like turn 3 or 4 when you're cleaning up the table. So just keep that in mind. Anytime he shoots, it needs to be at max range, and he is going to need to be safe. Do not kill yourself to shoot rapid fire storm bolters, guys. Please do not do that. Next, in just kind of mentioned it, connecting with shooting at max range, that's self-explanatory. We're going to take the tightest angles possible with our Dread Knights and our Crow unit and shoot those guys at 24, 18-inch range. Okay. Next is the Spawn. That is an incredible annoying unit in this matchup, and what we're going to try and do is we need to take care of it as quickly and as least like resource intensive as possible, so that we can get those guys out of our face and force our opponent to have to come out and play the game with their Berserkers and their 8-bound, because as soon as that starts to happen, that's where the Grey Knight player starts to win. Next, they have the Forge Fiends, who are very powerful at doing damage from range. However, they're really only effective within 18 inches. So we are just going to always pre-measure this to make sure that they're having the most minimal impact on the game as possible. I think they do like on average like anywhere from 3 to 6 damage to a Dread Knight if they're outside of 18, and if they're within 18 they can do anywhere from like 6 to 9. On average, they do not top to bottom a Dread Knight. However, it is possible, so just please do not let that happen for no reason. Okay, the next point here, it doesn't make a ton of sense maybe just in text form, but when I do a battle report I will be able to illustrate this a lot better. But we need to overload the weak side of the table, because with that, World Eaters, they don't have a ton of ways to like reposition and things like that if they're caught on the wrong side of the board. So if you can clear off an entire flank of the table with our army, that is when we start to win the game. So whatever side they're weaker on, that's the side we want to overload most of our army and focus on clearing up the table so that we can go win the game. And the last piece, World Eaters do not have a ton of cheap units to screen with. Generally, they have the Jackals and the Spawn and the Rhino, if you want to count that. So as soon as we can clear those off the table, whether we have to trade down for a little bit just to open up the board for us, that is something that goes a long way in winning this matchup. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to break down the most impactful units that they have in this game and how I handle them and kind of what to look out for. The infamous World Eater Forge Fiend. This guy got a big damage buff in the new book. For those who don't know, what he does is now he hits on 4s, which is not good, but he gets rapid fire when he's within 18, and when he shoots at the closest eligible target within 18, he gets full rerolls to hit. So what we can do is we can manipulate this 18-inch range thing just by positioning our cheaper units to make sure that he's never going to get full rerolls to hit into things like our Dread Knight and our Crow unit, right? So next, he shoots 3d3 shots at 10-3 flat 3, which is very strong. And like I mentioned earlier, he does have blast and the full rolls hit with an 18. So if he lines up correctly and you're not in cover, he can kill a lot of things in our list very efficiently. So how do we counter this guy? So we need to, number one, this is probably the most important thing I can tell you, is pre-measure 28.1 away from this thing. So it moves 10 inches and its rapid fire is range 18. So if it moves 10 and its rapid fire is 18, as long as you are outside 28 inches, it will never have rapid fire or rerolls to hit against you. Now, if that's not possible, all you need to do is talk with your opponent and make sure that if I move this 10, even though I am within 18 of this key target, he does not have rerolls to hit because this thing I don't care about as much is closer than the other target. Something else that comes up a lot is we are still playing Grey Knights, so basically our entire army has a 2+ armor save. So even this guy is AP 3, if we do have our Strike Marines or our Purifiers in cover, we are still saving on 4s, which is still a big deal. So even if he hands us 4 or 5 saves, we're likely going to save 2 or 3 of them, and maybe we even spike and don't die. So that is very important there. Try not to stand in the open when you have a Forge Fiend lined up against you. Can be a really good way to scam some damage and keep some board presence when maybe you didn't have to, right? Next is force them into the sides of the table. Now, one of these guys never kills a Dread Knight, right? But 2 of them almost always does. So what we always want to do in this matchup is play on the sides of the table. We don't really want to send a lot into the middle unless we're doing it to contest the middle objective, clear off the middle objective, or do a very small trade early game. We never want to have our Dread Knight or our Crow unit on the middle of the table until we are in late game trying to clean the board up, okay? Now, this thing does need to die at some point in the game, so there are a few different ways to handle it. So the one I usually end up doing is like a turn 2 or a turn 3 rapid ingress with the GM NDK. They will pretty much always top to bottom this between shooting and melee. It's like, I don't think I've ever seen that fail. However, they do have a 5 invulnerable, so, maybe they get lucky here and there, but don't worry about it. If you stick a rapid with a GM NDK, you'll almost always take care of these guys, all right? Then the next way I handle it is I line up like 3 Dread Knights to shoot at it from like a safe location. 2 is like really, really flippy, and like 1 will never do it. So if you line up 3 from like a safe spot and clean it up, the 18 side cannon shots with 4 rolls to hit will pretty much always take care of a Forge Fiend. Not to mention some amount of melta shots going in and silencers or incinerators, whatever other guns you threw on your Dread Knights. But when these things are exposed and they're lined up for you to take care of, I would suggest doing it. However, do not just throw 1 Dread Knight into it and like 5 Purifiers, because you most likely will not kill it, and then you end up hung out and you're going to die because this thing doesn't really take a lot of penalty from taking damage. Okay, so that's the Forge Fiend. It's a definitely annoying thing that they have, but the other stuff in this list is definitely more notable for us to take care of and has a lot more counterplay for us to have over the course of a game. All right, likely one of the scarier parts of this matchup is the 8-bound and the Exalted 8-bound. So I'm sure you guys are aware, but if you didn't know, the Exalted 8-bound did get a pretty substantial buff in points and ability in the most recent data slate. So now they become flat 3 damage against vehicles, and they wound them on 3s all the time. So your Dread Knights will pretty much always die to 3 Exalted 8-bound charging them, and frankly, your Dread Knights are mostly going to die to 1 8-bound charging them normally. So these guys are looking to do a few different things over the course of the game, and I put this in order instead of bullet points because I think it is important for you to understand where the priority for these guys is going to be. So your front line in this matchup, a lot of the time is going to be your GM-NDKs and your NDKs, like post turn 2. So those guys are going to take the brunt of the 8-bound most likely. However, the next thing that they cannot ever get to is the 10-man Crow unit. This Crow unit, you need to communicate with your opponent deeply and passionately every single turn that you play this with this unit, because you cannot have this unit die for no reason. It needs to activate 2 or 3 times in this matchup for you to be successful. So please keep that in mind. And then third, if you play this matchup really well and you take away their trading pieces very early, they are going to have to start becoming the World Eater's trade piece, and they're going to go after anything that you have that is not a trade piece, which is good for you. So if you end up having these guys charge 5 purifiers or like a transport or something, that ends up being really good for us because they're giving up a very valuable resource for a resource we don't care quite as much about. So how do we counter this unit, right? They fold all of our damage profiles like very easily. Even a freaking Stormbolter will kill these guys in Warpbane pretty well. So just keep that in mind. Like, they are going to die very easily. If you can catch them hanging out, it ends up being very comfortable for us to take care of. They do move 10 inches with their move and scout, so they could theoretically go 16 inches on turn 1. However, I don't really see that happen very much, so don't worry too much about the scout play. Just make sure they can't catch anything super for free on their scout move, and you should be fine. Now, there are times where you're going to have to commit units in this matchup that do dot 8-bound, and you do not want them to dot 8-bound. So a lot of times they're going to be staged in ruins and like against walls, somewhere that you can't shoot them, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to just block those moves with interceptors or transports. So they have to basically bounce off something before they get to go play the game. And 9 times out of 10, if they're forced to go bounce off 5 interceptors or a transport, you are going to be able to shoot them with a very safe angle with a Dread Knight. And very often a Dread Knight will kill 2 or 3 of these guys without even batting an eye, which is very good for us. Next, we want to force them to connect with our skirmish pieces so you can answer from a safe distance. That kind of goes into like the last thing that I said a little bit, but nothing crazy here. We just want to make sure these guys are not hitting our Dread Knights 4 times over the course of the game, because most World Eater lists have 4 8-bound in some arrangement. Usually it's 2 exalted and 2 normal ones. So if those guys hit an 8-bound, hit a Dread Knight every single time that they activate, that is very bad for us. So we really want to keep that in mind to force them to hit the skirmish pieces. And that comes about with us taking away their trading pieces as fast and as efficiently as possible. So these 8-bound are forced to come out and play the game before our opponent wants to. And the last little note is kind of goes back to the damage. 5-man strikes and purifiers pretty much always clean up 3-man 8-bounds, and like you can threaten them with these guys, right? So if they like want to hide behind a wall and you like posture like a 6-inch charge with your purifiers or coming out of a transport or whatever, that is absolutely something that you can do, and that's going to force our opponent to have to do something, because I tell you, I've rolled this many times. Purifiers and strike squads between shooting and charging pretty much always kill 3 8-bound, so it is a very safe play that forces our opponent to have to react to it. Okay, Mr. Demon Prince. This guy is very annoying. However, once you get the hang of how to handle this thing and know what he's trying to do, it does become very, very manageable, and you just have to basically pick when you want to deal with him and kind of go from there. So this is talking about specifically the -1 damage enhancement Demon Prince. There's obviously a few other variables of it, but this one is specifically talking about the -1 damage, which I think is the most popular. So what is he trying to do? What he's trying to do is go first, or their first turn. He's trying to either stand in the middle with Lone Op or stand on their expansion with Lone Op, not die, and hand out free CP over the course of 5 turns. He generally becomes a mid to late game damage piece, but he is very, very durable, because for those that don't know, he can end up being -2 damage in melee. So even if you're damage 3, you can get all the way down to damage 1. He has 10 wounds, which means theoretically math says you have to hand him 20 wounds. Anon is vulnerable for you to kill this guy, which is not likely going to happen. So we have other ways to deal the damage to him, and that is going to be through Tank Shock and Grenade. It puts this guy in a very, very consistent kill range, right? So if you do 6 damage, 7 damage between a Tank Shock and a Grenade, and then whatever shooting trash you have at him. It ends up being very manageable for you to charge him with a normal Dread Knight or 5 Purifiers and finish off the last few wounds that he has, because for those who don't know, Purifiers winning on 5s, rerolling is very efficient, and he's going to be shot by a bunch of guns. So this guy goes down pretty smoothly once you start hitting him with a tank shock and a grenade. Like, you could go like Purifier, Razorback, charge with Purifiers. Like, will most of the time take care of this guy unless your opponent spikes or you spike down. One thing I will say is do not get baited into charging this guy with a GMNDK or something like that, because you're not likely to kill him, right? You really, really do not want to charge this guy and not kill him, because he kills almost everything we have back incredibly efficiently. So just really just allocate 1 to 2 CP to take care of this guy. Make him not a problem anymore. I assure you, more often than not, the Purifier Razorback combo there in the middle will take care of this thing, and you get to move on to handling the rest of their list. Other things to keep in mind, he's the only 3 OC. Like, if you want to drop like, a transfer with 1 guy on there or whatever, but you end up just giving up a lot of stuff to do that. I think just line up a grenade and a tank shock, and you can remove this guy from the game as early as possible. If you spike down, it is what it is. Line up a couple of the Dread Knights to shoot him maybe, but more often than not, I think this guy goes down pretty smoothly in this matchup. Just remember, mortals are the ticket to taking care of this guy. Alrighty, likely the most complicated part of this matchup is navigating the Karn and 10 Berserker unit in a Rhino. Now, different opponents handle this unit different ways. More often than not, this thing is going to be in the Rhino till turn 3 or 4, where they're going to make a move to go likely try and end the game out of a safe ruin with advance and charge out of the Rhino. So what is this unit trying to do? So number 1 is stage aggressively in the best ruin our opponent has, which is because it is their best unit, it does their most damage, and it is the most durable. So another thing it's going to do is, if you end a move within 9, if you guys don't know, the Rhino allows you to disembark and stand there. So a lot of the times what you see happen is they have this protecting like 8-bound or the Demon Prince, and you end within 9 to do a charge into one of those guys. They get out, then the heroic, they take a bunch of OC on the middle objective, and then they Blood Surge flat 8 when they get shot, and it's just unbelievably annoying unit to have to deal with. So how do we handle this unit? Number 1, and this is to answer a lot of things in this matchup and why it's so important, is the Crow unit will almost 1-to-1 this unit, no questions asked, in 1 activation. And 1 activation is very important here because they're not going to get to Blood Surge, or if they do get to Blood Surge, it's going to be with like Karn and like 1 guy, which is super manageable versus Karn and like 6 guys, because a Dread Knight will not kill that many of these guys in 1 shooting activation. You're lucky if you kill 4 with 1 Dread Knight shooting, right? So what we want to do is we want to line up Crow. Then we want to line up something that is not that important for us, just in case the blood roll goes bad. So if they do decide to Blood Surge, it is going to be into that thing that is now the closest target, which is how Blood Surge has to work. Now, there are times where our opponent lines up a Rhino, like he puts it on the expansion or he stages it really aggressively, and we've, it's turn 3/top of 4 or whatever. We've cleaned up a lot of screens, and we've catch a line on it with like a Dread Knight or 2 Dread Knights and Crow's unit. You need to go for this play whenever you see it. Okay, 2 Dread Knights will like always kill a Rhino, and it's very likely 1 kills a Rhino. So like ideally the play is like you drop 2 Dread Knights and Crow, the 2 Dread Knights kill the guys inside, and then Crow takes care of the Berserkers that fall out. Now obviously that is a perfect scenario. However, I'm telling you, it does happen in a lot of games, especially if they hold on to this thing too long and you clean up the screens. You're going to be able to drop in and clear this thing and take it out. Now that is a play where it's fine to get Crow charged out of there, because you are taking care of their most important piece in their list on their turn. Now, something small to note is you cannot Blood Surge when you are Battle Shocked. And when you fall out of a vehicle that blows up, you are Battle Shocked. So that's another perk of it. So just make sure you end your move outside of 9, drop in your stuff, target it with a couple of Dread Knights, blow it up. Crow's unit should evaporate the rest of this unit in shooting. Now, again, if there's a couple of guys left, they cannot Blood Surge. And in a perfect world, you will be able to Overwatch and finish up this unit with Crow. Notably, this unit can never connect with Crow first. Okay, if that happens, you are just going to lose the game. So you need to always be communicating with your opponent on where that unit can end, blah, 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 blah. Have a heroic set up for Crow, have move blocks set up for Crow. These guys just cannot charge Crow or the game will end unless you've just magically killed all of your opponent's stuff and you have 4 Dread Knights left. Then sure, they can go charge Crow. But in a good equal skill matchup, that is just not going to happen. So it's very, very important that this unit never touches Crow and Crow always touches it first. Same thing goes with it when it's on the table. You always want to have Crow available to answer this unit, which is another really, really important part of making sure Crow is always shooting things from 18 inches away. It is just very, very critical for this matchup. So that is the Karn unit. Okay, so that is kind of my interpretation and my breakdown of what I look for when I'm playing this matchup and how I like to handle those key units that our World Eater opponent has. Like I said, I'm going to be making all efforts possible to get a battle report out in the next few days, showcasing this matchup, and hopefully I'll get an opportunity to use some of the things that I'm talking about here in a practical setting so you guys can see it live. So that's really it for the video today. If you guys like this format or you prefer maybe no battle report and examples kind of within the video, let me know. I'm going to be making a lot of these guides, so just really comment your feedback on what you think of it and what army you want to see next. So thank you guys, like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.